Welcome to BodyHack and Build a Better You, the podcast where we unlock the secret to living a longer, healthier life and create a bloom zone in our life and within our family. I'm your host, Michaela Morrell, and I'm here to provide you with the tools and knowledge to empower you to build a better you, one essential building block at a time. Today, we're going to talk about biohacking your iron levels, how you can optimize them with nutrition, supplementations, and even lifestyle hacks. I'll also share how your gut health and the right nutrients like omega-3s and vitamin C and olive oil can play a critical role in improving your iron absorption and keeping you feeling your best. I want to remind you that this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Read the disclaimer in the show notes, and I want to remind you to always consult your healthcare provider if you plan to make any dietary changes. Hi guys! I'm not sure where you are in the world, but the winter can feel a little bit long. It can feel a little bit hard to get through, especially if it's a lot of darkness around you. I do have a prior episode of vitamin D if you're struggling with that you can go back to listen to. But today I want to focus on another thing that can be a little bit seasonal. It doesn't have to be that it's always happening during the winter time, but it can happen while we're pregnant. It can happen in different phases in our life. And it's iron deficiency. So iron deficiency can make you struggle with brain fog, extreme fatigue, and just low energy levels. So we're going to talk about today what is really the problem, or can it be different types of problems? What can we do in order to make sure that we're absorbing the iron that we are supposed to absorb from the food we're already eating? And are there foods that we can eat more of to increase our iron levels naturally without needing a supplementation? And is supplementation really needed? Or are there other issues in our body that we may not get educated about that we might have to look into a little bit more before we're fully gonna achieve optimal levels of iron? But before we start getting into all of that, I want to take you on a journey with iron. And I want to start with a funny fact that you may not know. Did you know that iron was the very first metals to be used by humans 5,000 years ago? Ancient civilizations valued iron not only for making tools, but also because they believed it had healing properties. And fast forwarding to today, we know iron is essential for our health because it's playing a critical role in our oxygen transportation and energy production. And we might be curious of how they could know that already back then. And I truly believe that if we are intuitive, we are kind of drawn to what we're needed. And I'm not saying that just because you feel drawn to eating chocolate doesn't mean that you're lacking chocolate today, but it might mean that you're lacking magnesium, for example. So in everything you do, you can find food clues of what is going on with your health. But let's look, what is iron doing in our body? And like you know, if you're sending out postcards over the holidays, the postcards are not going to be delivered into the mailboxes all by themselves. They need some type of service. And we're having a postal service in every single country. And I just saw the post truck outside of my house. So that's why I was talking about that today. So iron is actually essential to produce hemoglobins, like our post guys that is walking around and delivering mail. But in our case, we need the oxygen to be delivered to different places in our body. And what do you think is happening if we don't get the oxygen? Well, oxygen is important for every cell to function, every organ to function, every cell that is supposed to produce energy. And if we're not getting the oxygen that we need, we're not going to be able to produce as much energy that we need. And if we're not having energy, we're going to feel fatigue, dizziness, and also have a weakened immune system. So we want to make sure that we are never deficient in iron and that we are close to the anemia border or even is anemic already. But then too much iron can also be problematic. I don't know if you have a cast iron skillet at home, but if you have probably seen the oxidative stress that can be put under and it starts to rust. And that's the oxidative stress. And if we're having too much iron in our body, the oxidative stress can be overbearing for our body, also causing side effects that we don't want. So having a good balance is key, like in everything when we're talking about the body. But going to the doctor and maybe getting a diagnosis of iron deficiency and anemia, I get a little bit frustrated because the only thing the doctors are doing is prescribing you more iron. And I don't agree with that. I believe that we need more education around the subject because it's not that easy like adding more iron to your diet, because there are different reasons why you can be anemic. And one of the biggest reasons why people are anemic is because their gut health is not good. We have different microbiome in our gut that is needed for iron absorption. And if we're not having enough of the good gut bacteria, it can cause us to not be able to absorb the iron that we are eating. And we're eating iron in all leafy greens, in all red meat, in legumes. You can find them in whole grains, but again, the grains is not really anything I'm like promoting people to eat a lot of because it do create inflammation in our body. There is a reason why we're feeding our animals grains, because grains creates inflammation, and when it creates inflammation, our animals gets fatter faster, which gives a higher profit. But if we're eating grains too, we can also be subjected to get heavier than we're supposed to. But you find also iron in seeds and nuts, in fruits to some degree. And of course, all women want to talk about chocolate. And yeah, sometimes we just need a good piece of chocolate. We just have to make sure it's not Lind or some other brand that have put way too much lead in their chocolate, because we do not want to have become lead poisoned as well. So there are better and worse brands out there, so try to do a little bit of research. And if you want to make sure, you might just want to make it yourself, but just check that your cacao powder is not heavy on lead. Okay? And I'm sorry, it's not easy to eat optimal, and I'm not trying to in any way make people afraid of food. We need food. If it's between not eating and eating, of course it's better to eat. But we just have to understand that if we are eating something daily that contains some toxins, the toxic built up will be overbearing for the body eventually. So that's why it can be smart to just get educated on the things that we're eating daily, which ones can we make a little bit smarter choice around. And whenever we have done that choice, it's easy to stick to that choice. So for example, if you're deciding that out of all fruits you're purchasing, it might be smartest to buy organic bananas instead of non-organic. And then you always stick to always buy organic bananas versus non-organic if bananas is the fruit that you might be consuming the most. So the health of your gut is directly affecting your iron absorption rate. So if someone had pointed out that you are low on your iron levels, I would definitely start thinking about, how am my gut doing? Am I struggling with headaches? That's a sign of leaky gut. Are you struggling with migraines? That's a sign of leaky gut. Are you having any autoimmune condition? Have you been struggling with constipation? Constipation meaning not being able to relieve yourself more, like less than once a day. Preferably you should do it like 2 to 3 times a day. But if we get it daily, at least we are on the right track. And the consistency should be good. It should not be diarrhea. It should not look like small rabbit poops. It should look more like a hot dog that is attached to every part of the hot dog and not divided up. And that is what we can see is the healthiest state. And of course, there might be variation depending on what you're eating, but we want to have more good days than bad days. Are you struggling with a lot of gas? Are you struggling with food sensitivities? That is a sign of your gut not doing well as well, allergies, and so on. So just because you're deficient in iron doesn't mean that that is the only problem. It's usually something that have been developing over 10 years, and eventually your body is not able to absorb as much as it's supposed to. So are you also having a dysbiosis between your good versus bad gut bacteria that can hinder the absorption because the bad gut bacteria takes up too much space and you simply don't have enough of good? Another thing to look into is that a lot of parasites loves iron. So if you are struggling with parasites in your gut too, they might be the thief stealing your iron. Parasites love stealing things. They should be locked up somewhere else than in your gut. So gut health is an important part. Then we also have to look at the key nutrients and potential supplements that can help you enhance your iron levels. So looking at iron-rich food, I already mentioned some of them, but where you definitely find the most iron is in animal products. And the heme iron from animal products is more bioavailable than the non-heme iron that comes from plants. So if you're struggling with your iron levels, if you feel like maybe you need to increase your food intake, you should definitely focus on red meat, liver, poultry, and especially with the bones, and fish. But if you're plant-based, focus on lentils, spinach, quinoa, for example. And of course, leafy greens. But leafy greens can also be problematic. Spinach is, for example, very high on iron, but spinach is also high in oxalates. So if you're eating too much spinach, you might end up with oxalate overload, and that can be problematic for your organs as well. So it's good to get your iron from a lot of different sources and not overload on just one food group. And also, if you're eating meat, make sure that your meat is grass-fed, organic, and not grass-finished. We want them to be out on the pastures eating grass and hay for as much as possible, and not just the last week so that they can put a stamp on the package. And when you're eating iron, it's important to understand that we need vitamin C. And vitamin C is also so good from an anti-aging perspective. And since iron can bring oxidative stress, we want vitamin C as well to fight that oxidative stress. So that can mean that you are eating an orange, drinking orange juice, but I always prefer real fruit versus juices because we also want the fibers that are in the fruit versus just getting the sugar kick that we get from drinking a juice. The body responds very differently to the two different. So I always encourage you to eat vitamin C rich foods instead, like bell peppers, oranges. All citrus fruits are really good. Strawberries are also good. So if you can add strawberries to your leafy green salad and squeeze over a lemon and olive oil. Olive oil is another thing that we want to implement more of in our diet because extra virgin olive oil, and you have to make sure that it's extra virgin and that it's actually olive oil in it. It had been a lot of attention around extra virgin olive oil that people are misleading customers. They are purchasing oil, they're shipping it to different countries, they're adding other types of oil into it. It's not clean, it's not creative where they're labeling it, and they can have very poor quality and with no polyphenols whatsoever in them. And yet they sell it expensive, and people are thinking, oh, this is a high-priced extra virgin olive oil. The more expensive it is, the better it is. And it does not have to be the case. Of course, extra virgin olive oil do cost some money because if it's quality, it do cost. But a lot of labels are not giving you the quality that you should get for the money. So just be aware of that. But extra virgin olive oil can help support your gut and promote your good gut bacteria and indirectly aiding for a better absorption. And extra virgin olive oil also have anti-inflammatory properties, which also help reduce the inflammation that might be going on in your gut, causing your gut health to not be optimal. And because we are then reducing the levels of inflammation in your gut, your absorption rate can increase. And another nutrient that can help you with your iron levels is actually omega-3 fatty acids. And if you can pair the omega-3 together with extra virgin olive oil, it's almost like a miracle cure. It's just fascinating how they're working together and yeah, super exciting. But why can omega-3 be beneficial for your iron levels? Omega-3 can help with your cell membranes, which can then make them more flexible and permeable, which makes the nutrients we need to get into the cells, which makes it easier for the nutrients that are supposed to get into your cells to get in there. So it can help enhance the absorption as well and the utilization of the nutrients we're having in our blood. And of course, since we're talking about inflammation levels too, omega-3 also have anti-inflammation properties. So it can be good to make sure that we're balancing. And I always tell people take a test to measure how many pro versus anti-inflammatory building blocks you have, how many omega-6s versus omega-3s, and start correcting that imbalance. And when you're correcting that imbalance, I just tend to see that people are less likely struggling with iron deficiency if they're eating a normal diet because the body is able to absorb more. If you're eating a processed diet, of course, then we probably have to either change your diet or add supplementations if making changes is hard for your lifestyle. But usually I don't want to go to supplementations of iron if I don't have to, because it can be hard for the gut. There are some different types of irons that are easier or worse. And if anyone is supposed to supplement with iron, I usually recommend that you use a gluconate supplement and a carbonate supplement and you alter them every other day. And talking about gut health again, something else that can improve your gut health, a lot of people are directly going to, Michaela, could a probiotic help my gut health if I'm struggling with iron deficiency? And I usually tell people to stay away from probiotic supplementation. They can be good, but most of the times they're not giving an effect, or it can give an effect, but only as long as they're taking it. But probiotics can be very problematic. I'll probably do another episode just about this because we need to deep dive a little bit more in that. But basically, probiotics, the bacteria that is good for a microbiome, it's very hard to have them alive. And if they are alive in a capsule, because bacteria, like the bacteria in your gut, they're only alive for about 2 hours and then they're changed out. Like they become alive, they do their thing, they die, and they have a very fast life cycle. So taking it from a supplementation that have been on the shelf for a very, very long time, most of the times it's not so many bacteria alive in that capsule. And a lot of companies are starting to come out and like selling you probiotics that have either been in the refrigerator or in the freezer. But the problem with that is that they're asleep, so that when you are swallowing the pill, a lot of the times they're not woken up before they're almost out of your system again. The third problem is that all of these bacteria, they are foragers. So your own colonies can actually attack the new colonies coming in. So they may actually cause more stressors to your microbiome. And if people are having no good microbiome at all, I'm usually pointing them towards a fecal transplant instead. But in order to improve your own microbiome, because everyone have good and bad microbiome, if they haven't totally been wiped out with antibiotics and many years of medication and processed foods and high sugar, high carb diets. But even if you have, we can most of the times restore it without a fecal transplant, but it can be a longer road for people. But feeding the good gut bacteria that we already have is so much more beneficial. So I recommend usually that people look into prebiotic fibers. And I like to have a lot of different types. So the one I'm using on a daily basis, it have 8 different prebiotic fibers that I'm getting into my system every day. I know that that one in particular is balanced in a way that is avoiding dysbiosis, because even if you're adding good things to your body, it can cause disruption if you're adding too much. For example, like if you're only getting your prebiotics through flax seeds, for example. Well, the bacteria that loves flaxseed, they're going to be super happy and they're going to eat it and they're going to duplicate. But what is happening when they're duplicating, and there is no other bacteria in your gut duplicating? You can create a dysbiosis by having too many of one type of the good gut bacteria. So we have about 300 to 1,000 different species in your gut. That is why it's so important to have different types of prebiotics coming into your gut to feed different species that are good for your gut health and create an environment where a lot of different good species can grow simultaneously. So there is not a dysbiosis created, if that makes sense. But even if you shouldn't take probiotic supplementation, I do encourage you to eat a lot of probiotic foods because that is very beneficial. And I usually recommend yogurt, of course, not sweetened, but plain yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, kombucha. So there is a lot of different things that can be beneficial to you. So if you can get at least 2, 3 servings a week with some type of fermented food, that would be lovely. I feed my kids every morning either plain Greek yogurt or I mix it with kefir or they're only eating kefir. I like the Greek yogurt because it's just having more proteins as well. I want my kids to have proteins in the morning. If they're only eating kefir, I usually feed them eggs on the side too. But getting that into your system every day, it helps promote your good gut bacteria to just be happier. And of course, there is a lot of foods that have a lot of good prebiotics. Bananas, oats also, but again, oats is technically grain, so it may not be the best to eat it every single day. But it might be better to eat oats every day, especially if you do gluten-free oats, if you would either choose cereal. So like there is good, better, and best. So always think about that when I'm saying something that if you're already making a worse choice, a bad choice can be better than a worse choice. But you also find prebiotics in garlic, onions, and bananas, for example. So you find a lot of prebiotics actually just in fruits and veggies in general. So if you are focusing on eating as much whole foods every day as possible, you will be able to move your body in the right direction. But sometimes it can be hard if your gut is struggling a lot. It can be hard to just move it with healthy foods. And sometimes we need aid that supplementation can help us get on track faster because a lot of people, if it takes too long time, they lose the motivation and they think it's not going to work. So yeah. But your go person that you go to when you're wanting help with your health, they can help you. Some other things that is important when we're looking at biohacking your iron levels are to understand that iron have the same carriers as calcium. So if you're eating dairy to every single meal, you might be drinking milk in the morning, you might be eating lots of cheese for the lunch, and it can affect your iron absorption negatively. But again, if you're having a healthy absorption in your gut in general and the parasites are not eating up all your iron, you might be able to pair them just fine. So but it can be something that can be worth looking into if you feel like you're eating enough of iron, you have good gut health, and you still feel like you're not having optimal absorption, and you're already in omega balance, you're already eating olive oil, like then you might want to look into when do I eat my iron? And also, it's best to consume iron the first thing in the morning or late in the night, far away from when you work out. You don't want to pair working out with your iron intake. It's also good to understand that coffee and tea and stuff like that can also inhibit your iron absorption. So if you're eating a meal, you may not want to drink a cup of coffee or tea directly after the meal. You might want to wait a few hours before you have that cup. And then some easy things to increase your iron levels naturally in your food too. Use a cast iron skillet. Please remove all the bad Teflon pans that you might be using today. They're very toxic, even if they're claiming they're super clean. It's a lot of problems around them. A cast iron skillet, I know people are like, this is painful. How do I care for it? But oh, maybe you want to hear an episode about that too. I might do that. I'm writing it down. But if you start cooking your food in cast iron skillets, your food is going to contain a little bit more iron, which will then help again with your iron levels. And if you're supplementing, it is smartest to take your iron supplements together with vitamin C, remember, and preferably on empty stomach. So you can do it the first thing in the morning while you're prepping your breakfast or before you go for a walk or something. So you might have been listening now up till now and still be wondering like, are there more symptoms to iron deficiency? What else can be a symptom of it? And I already mentioned fatigue and just feeling weak. You're going to the gym and you're not feeling like you are able to lift, or it's hard walking up the stairs. That can be because you're weak in your muscles, or also because you're not getting enough of oxygen around in your body walking up, so you get to high pulse. If you have pale skin, that can be a sign. And if you have brittle nails and hair loss, that can also be a sign of iron deficiency. So I see a lot of vegetarians and vegans, for example, that start having hair thinning. Iron levels are something I usually want to look at as quick as possible as well. And if you suspect that you have an iron deficiency, I encourage you to go to your healthcare provider and have them test your ferritin and hemoglobin levels. But I want to make you aware of another thing. Are normal iron levels really normal? And one thing that is important to understand so that you can self-advocate for yourself is that normal iron levels has changed over the years. Today, the cutoff diagnosing low iron has been reduced significantly. And why does this matter? Like, have it changed? No, we still have the need for iron. But what have been happening is that when people that are deciding the levels of what we need, they're looking at the population, what the average healthy population is. But the problem is that our average healthy population today is not as healthy as they're supposed to be. So it's basically just the average of what the population is having today that is not complaining too much. So why does this matter? Because even if iron levels are technically normal by today's standards, they still can be too low for optimal health, especially if you're experiencing symptoms like brain fog, fatigue, or cold hands and feet. The doctors might say that you're within the range and nothing is wrong with you, and still you're feeling like something is off and you don't understand it. So I would recommend you to look at your own lab work and see what are your levels. So today they can list 10 to 20 nanograms per milliliter as normal. But optimal levels for feeling your best is usually 50 to 100 nanograms. So you can then see that if you are at 15 and it's considered normal, but you really need 50 to 100 for optimal health, it can be a big difference. And especially if you are an athlete or working out a lot, that makes a huge difference because we need that oxygen to travel around. Otherwise, we're not going to have the ability to perform as good as we want to. So if you are still feeling like something is off, but your test results are normal, you might want to ask your provider for the results and maybe go and ask for a second opinion with someone that have a little bit more of a specialty to deal with iron levels. So I hope I've given you some tools to start biohacking your iron levels today. And if you're wanting to learn more of how you can improve your health in the next 4 months, maybe you want to join my 4-month challenge that is going on right now. Reach out to me over Instagram and send me a DM. And for you who are out there and have committed to do some changes in your life and starting to stack some healthy habits, I applaud you and I'm so happy for your journey that you have ahead of you. And just know that a health journey is not always linear. It goes up and down. But what we're trying to do when we are becoming better is to never do the same mistake twice. So, or at least 3 times. So, for example, if you're eating super healthy this week and then you have ice cream on Friday and then you do ice cream on Saturday too, don't do it on Sunday. Get back on the horse. Let's get into back to your routine and your habits. And I know life is up and down. Your weight will be up and down. Your results will be up and down. Our healthy eatings will be up and down. But if we can turn it around and eat more healthy than unhealthy, if we can feed our good gut bacteria more than we are feeding our bad gut bacteria, your body will thank you in the long run. So thank you guys for hanging out with me today. And I would love, love, love if you headed over to my Instagram and shared one habit you are trying to stick with this year that will make a change in your health. That can be taking a daily walk. It can be swapping your drinks to water. It can be that you are switching out all the white bread to whole grain bread. It can be that you're cutting out grains completely. Like whatever it is that you are wanting to do this year, I would love if you can go into my Instagram and comment on the podcast episode for today. And if you do that, I am probably going to follow up with a few in the end of the year, see how it have gone. And maybe I find someone that would be fun to bring on to the podcast and do an interview with. But anyway, I am so grateful for you guys being here. I appreciate all of you. And let's go out and take a little bit more charge of our body, do some more body hacking, and yeah, feel how it feels when our body is thanking us with a better functioning body, a happier body and mind, and a happier gut, and all the benefits that will come from our new habits this year. 2025 is the year for transformation. So if you're joining that transformation, let me know. Thank you guys for being here. Bye. Hey guys, if you enjoyed today's episode, I encourage you to do one thing for me. Think of one person you want to share this podcast with and copy the link and send it right away. Thanks for playing an important role in the Blue Zone community. And if you want to keep on building a better you, one essential building block at a time, hit that subscribe button. See you in the next episode.